Rain hit the streets like war drums. Tires hissed. Sirens screamed in the distance. Jimmy's bike tore down Halstead Avenue, slicing through puddles like a knife. The delivery timer on his phone flashed red, 45 seconds left. He didn't care about tips anymore. He just wanted to survive this shift, maybe grab some gas station coffee that didn't taste like disappointment. A bolt of lightning cracked the sky in half. Thunder followed like a slap to the face. Jimmy leaned forward, pedaling harder, squinting through the sheets of rain. The cake box strapped to his back was already soggy, but he wasn't about to show up empty-handed. It was a birthday order, rush delivery for some kid on the south side. As he cut through an alley between two crumbling tenements, a utility pole ahead sparked violently. He saw it, just a blink, a wire whipping loose in the air, glowing blue like a viper. And then, white. Pain. Silence. His body seized before he hit the ground. The bike skidded out from under him. His head cracked against the pavement, helmet barely absorbing the hit. Water surged around him, every nerve in his body lit up like a Christmas tree. And then, nothing. When he came to, he was staring at a stained ceiling tile under flickering lights. A nasal voice echoed nearby. "He's awake." Where? His throat was a desert. "You're at Mercy Urgent Care," said a man in scrubs. "You got lucky, son. Minor concussion, a few burns, but no internal damage. Considering you took a live wire to the skull, that's nothing short of a miracle." Jimmy blinked slowly. His limbs tingled. His hair smelled like smoke. His helmet sat cracked on the counter. "The cake?" The nurse stared. "You're worried about the cake?" Jimmy fumbled into his jacket pocket. Miraculously, the cash was still there. Wet, but not gone. Thank God. That's groceries for the week. They let him leave that night with gauze on his temple, Tylenol in his bag, and strict instructions to rest and stay hydrated. As if gig workers could afford days off. The sky had cleared, but the city felt wrong. Not visibly. But underneath. Like everything was just a beat off tempo. The first weird thing happened at the corner store. He reached for the last bottle of Coke on the shelf. So did an older woman next to him. Their fingers brushed. And then, "This little punk better not grab my grandson's Coke. I'll yank it out his hands and whack him with my purse if I have to. Frank better be hiding that mattress money where I can't smell it. I swear if he thinks I don't know." Jimmy yanked his hand back like she'd slapped him. The woman gave him a side eye, clutched the Coke like a trophy, and huffed her way to the register. He stood there frozen. Cold. Shaking. What was that? Not a voice. Not memory. Thoughts. Her thoughts. He told himself it was trauma. Concussion. Delayed auditory hallucinations. It happened again the next day, bumping shoulders with a guy in a business suit running late to the office. Crap, 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 if I miss this punch-in, that's the whole attendance bonus gone. Shouldn't we watch the Bulls game till 2 a.m. I'll just borrow her eye cream again tonight, those underbags make me look like a corpse. Jimmy had heard every single word, without the guy saying anything out loud. And then he knew. Something changed when lightning kissed his skull. Jimmy wasn't just hearing voices. He was hearing people. And they had no idea. Jimmy Hayes knew every shortcut in Chicago. Not the ones on Google Maps, the real ones. The alley that let you skip 2 lights on Wabash. The back staircase behind the old textile mill that let you cross under the overpass during rush hour. The one-way lane that nobody enforced unless the Bears were playing. His legs were machines. His hands, calloused and sure. His bike, a beat-up electric hybrid named Gloria, was held together with duct tape, prayer, and stubbornness. Every morning, Jimmy pulled on his orange delivery jacket, slipped into his waterproof gloves, and did what he always did, moved. Pedaling meant forgetting. Stopping meant remembering that he had no family, no college degree, and no plan. Just a cat named Asphalt, who greeted him every night like a grumpy landlord. The gloves were new. Thick. Heat-trapped. But not for the cold. Not really. They were his armor. Ever since the lightning strike, Jimmy couldn't touch anyone without hearing the full, unfiltered mess of their brain. At first, he'd tested it. Touched a shoulder. A hand. A paw. Turns out cats had opinions, too. Asphalt's internal monologue was a Shakespearean tragedy about portion sizes. But the worst part? He couldn't shut it off. Crowds became unbearable. Buses, train platforms, grocery lines, he avoided them like plague zones. Every accidental brush meant another flood of fear, regret, boredom, judgment, grief. He had no control. So Jimmy started layering. Gloves. Hood. Sunglasses. He didn't look like a courier anymore. He looked like someone casing a jewelry store. He didn't care. The less he touched, the quieter the world stayed. On a rainy Tuesday, he got a ping on his app. Document delivery. Apex Global HQ priority. Direct handoff. Jimmy's heart sank. Apex Global was not his usual crowd. They didn't do takeout. They did catered boardroom lunches with embossed napkins. The HQ was a glass monster stretching into the sky like a middle finger to everyone below minimum wage. Still, work was work. Jimmy strapped on his helmet, pushed through the drizzle, and arrived at the tower's entrance. The lobby was so polished, he could see the oil stain on his own jeans reflected back at him. The receptionist didn't look up. Executive elevator. 99th floor. Straight ahead. He blinked. I'm going up? She pointed with a single manicured finger. He walked toward the private elevator, trying to be invisible, his neon jacket glowing like a flare. As the doors began to close, a hand darted out, slender and precise, stopping them mid-slide. A woman stepped in. Behind her, two men in tailored suits followed. Jimmy knew her the moment she entered. Janet Caldwell. CEO of Apex Global. Nicknamed the Ice Queen by half the city and the future of American capitalism by Forbes. She was taller than he expected. Paler, too. Her suit was black, razor-sharp, her hair pulled back into an immaculate twist that defied the laws of wind and humidity. She didn't acknowledge anyone, not even the executives flanking her. She just stepped in and stared at the glowing floor numbers. Jimmy pressed himself into the corner. The space was silent except for the soft hum of ascent and the muted terror leaking from the two suits behind her. Then the elevator shuddered. Just a flicker. Jimmy's balance slipped. He reached out instinctively, his gloved hand aiming for the rail. But his right hand wasn't gloved. He'd removed it to check his phone earlier and forgot. His fingers landed, soft and fast, on the fabric of her sleeve. Underneath, skin. His palm barely grazed her upper arm. And the floodgates blew open. I swear, if Peterson breathes one more molecule of that garlic breath in my direction, I'm ejecting him from the 99th floor myself. I should have cancelled this meeting. These vultures want a chunk of Project Halcyon and can't tell a spreadsheet from a fruit roll-up. Did Henderson seriously take his shoes off in my elevator again? That's it. I'm banning loafers. Dress code update coming. My God, who is this delivery guy? His arms look like a swimmer. That jacket color should be illegal. It's like traffic cone chic. I can't stop staring. Focus, Janet. You are an apex predator, not a teenage drama lead. Jimmy jerked his hand back like he'd touched fire. His breath caught in his throat. Janet didn't move. Her eyes remained forward, unreadable. But her mind, was a swirling, sarcastic, exhausted storm. And somewhere, buried under all the armor, was something else. Loneliness. No one else in that elevator knew. Not the suits. Not even herself, maybe. But Jimmy heard it. 3 hours of being told I'm too aggressive, too emotional, too female, too cold. I should have stayed in bed. Or at least ordered that stupid unicorn frappuccino. No. Ice queens don't do whimsy. They do black coffee and victory. When the doors opened on the 99th floor, she stepped out without a glance. Her heels clicked like a metronome. The men followed, whispering. Jimmy stayed behind, heart racing. He'd touched 100 strangers since the accident. But no one like her. Janet Caldwell, apex predator of Apex Global, had the most human thoughts he'd ever heard. And she'd just called his jacket traffic cone chic. Jimmy couldn't turn it off. Every brush of skin. Every accidental nudge on the train. Every time someone's hand got too close reaching for a condiment at the hot dog stand, thoughts. Unfiltered, uninvited, unstoppable. The old man by the bus stop, if Sheila doesn't call by Friday, I'm selling the dog. She never cared anyway. The barista at the bodega, I hope he doesn't notice I spit in that guy's latte. Dude was rude. The kid kicking his chair on the L train, how many kicks till it explodes? 10? Maybe 12? It was like standing under a waterfall of radio stations, all playing at once, all stuck inside his head. Jimmy couldn't sleep. Couldn't eat. Asphalt, his grumpy cat, had started meowing at his door at 3 a.m., as if trying to shake him out of his trance. So he doubled down on gloves. Doubled up on layers. Hood up. Hands in pockets. Eye contact avoided like it was contagious. But then Apex Global pinged him again. Urgent document delivery. Direct handoff. High priority clearance. He almost declined it. He should have. But his fingers hovered over the screen. And instead of hitting reject, he tapped accept. The lobby was the same, a cold, cavernous cathedral of capitalism. The kind of place where you could disappear beneath marble and gold trim and still feel like you didn't belong. The receptionist didn't look up. Executive floor. Private elevator. Jimmy pressed the button. No one else inside this time. Just him, the soft hum of the motor, and the air that somehow smelled like money. Until, of course, the doors reopened. Clara stepped in. Janet's assistant. Sharp lines. Gold-rimmed glasses. Perfect hair. She looked like she organized her own thoughts into spreadsheets before speaking. "Oh, you're the delivery guy," she said flatly. Jimmy offered the envelope. "I'll take it to her." Their fingers touched. She's barely holding it together. Michael's been breathing down her neck all week. That smug weasel knows she's cornered. And I can't help her. I'm just the assistant. She needs someone to step in. Someone smart. Someone she can trust. God, I wish I could scream in that boardroom for her. Jimmy's breath caught. He jerked his hand back. Clara didn't notice. He watched her stride away down the hall, stilettos clicking against the floor like a countdown clock. He stood frozen. Michael. The name lodged in his mind like a splinter. That night, Jimmy waited. He sat on a bench across the street from Apex, the document still burning in his head like a secret he had no right to carry. Then he saw them, Janet's board filing out of the building like they'd won a war. Janet didn't exit with them. But Michael did. Tall. Smirking. Balding slightly at the temples. He was talking into his phone, not even noticing Jimmy standing nearby. Jimmy stood. Took a step. Bumped into Michael, shoulder to shoulder. Contact. Finally. She's cracking. That letter of intent gets signed tomorrow, and she's finished. All I need is that offshore file her father tried to hide. Fletcher's ready to leak it if she doesn't play nice. That company will be mine. And Janet? She can go cry into her cold brew. Maybe prison will teach her how to smile. Jimmy didn't breathe. Didn't blink. Michael brushed past him. And Jimmy knew. This wasn't office politics. This was blackmail. And she was alone. He didn't know why it mattered. She was a billionaire. He was a delivery guy. She lived in penthouses. He lived above a laundromat where the machines didn't even take quarters. But her thoughts, he'd heard them. They weren't cruel. They weren't hollow. She was fighting. Hard. And she was scared. Jimmy had nothing. No contacts. No leverage. No reason to get involved. Except the one he couldn't explain. He reached into his messenger bag, past the crumpled receipts and spare bike tools. And there it was, a novelty keychain he'd picked up a week ago at a subway kiosk. A cheap little plastic cop. Bright blue hat. Stamped across the bottom in red bubble letters, Scam Alert. He stared at it. Then he walked straight back into Apex. No one stopped him. He knew the way now. Elevator. 99th floor. Same marble corridor. Same quiet hum. Janet stood outside her office door, flipping through a manila folder, perfectly composed. A column of Control in heels. He stepped closer. "Miss Caldwell," he said. She turned, instantly irritated. "You're still here? I think you dropped this." He held out the keychain. She didn't move. He pressed it gently into her palm. His bare fingers brushed hers. What is this? A toy? No, wait. Scam Alert. Is this a joke? Or a message? Did someone send him? How does he know? Project Halcyon isn't public. Michael wouldn't, unless someone overheard. No. The hallway's soundproofed. But what if, wait. Did he hear my thoughts again? No. That's not possible. Is it? Who is this guy? Her mind was fire and suspicion. But her fingers didn't let go of the plastic cop. Jimmy smiled once. Thought it might be helpful. You know. With all the scammers these days. Then he turned and walked away. Behind him, Janet remained still. In her hand, the keychain looked stupid. Childish. But her grip was white-knuckled. Jimmy didn't sleep that night. Not because of the lightning this time, or the noise in the city, or even asphalt pawing at the blanket like a judgmental roommate. It was Janet. More specifically, her mind. The things she didn't say out loud but screamed internally. The pressure. The loneliness. The sheer absurdity of someone so powerful, so terrifying on the outside, having thoughts like Peterson's breath is a war crime or I miss unicorn frappuccinos. She wasn't cold. She was tired. He couldn't stop hearing it. Her voice, her real voice, echoed in his skull long after he handed her the keychain. He kept replaying her thoughts over and over, not because he wanted to. Because he couldn't not. The keychain was a warning, sure. But it was also a confession. His way of saying, I know what's happening. And I care enough to say something. And now that he'd said something, walked away, what? Go back to deliveries? Drop off stir-fry and burrito bowls like nothing had happened? He wasn't built for this. He wasn't a whistleblower or a spy or a secret agent. He was a guy with a bike, a busted heater, and a cat that refused to eat off-brand tuna. But Janet's silence haunted him more than the city's noise. Across the river, in a suite above the 99th floor, Janet stood in her office with the keychain in her hand. The plastic figure sat on her desk like a riddle she couldn't solve. She'd watched the elevator footage 3 times already. The way Jimmy stood in the corner like he didn't belong. The way he bumped into Peterson right before Peterson's smug little monologue in the hallway. The flash of fury in Jimmy's eyes afterward. The way he'd returned just to hand her a piece of junk that wasn't junk at all. He saw something. He knows something. But how? She'd pulled up his delivery profile. James Hayes. Age 26. On-time rate, 97%. 5-star reviews. 0 customer complaints. The man had a flawless track record. For $10 deliveries. Rain or shine. Holidays. Midnight runs. Never missed a shift. That's rare. Almost too rare. But it doesn't feel fake. She stared at the image on the screen, him in that ridiculous orange jacket, smiling awkwardly in a selfie that barely showed his face. She watched the footage again. The way he reached out. The way he flinched after touching her. Like it hurt. No one flinched from her. They froze. They bowed. They obeyed. But this courier had recoiled like he'd just been struck again by lightning. Janet leaned back in her chair and exhaled. She hadn't meant to notice his arms. Or the way his voice sounded like warmth in a room full of frost. She didn't need someone like him. But something inside her, deep, old, and worn, whispered that she might want to. At 8 o'clock the next morning, she called Clara into her office. "I need you to contact Mr. Hayes." Clara blinked. "For another delivery?" Janet hesitated. "No. I need him to accompany me to the Peninsula Gala tonight." Clara stared, trying not to reveal that her brain just dropped its coffee mug. "Ma'am, you want him to be your date?" "Not date. Decoy," Janet snapped. "Fletcher's going to be there. Peterson too. I need someone who looks like he has no affiliation with me. But also someone I trust." "May I ask why you trust him?" Janet said nothing for a moment. Then quietly, "He handed me the only truth I've gotten in weeks." Jimmy was mid-delivery, something greasy in a bag that smelled like melted plastic, when his phone buzzed. Private request, $500 per hour. Instructions: meet the woman in black at the coffee shop next to Apex Global. He stared at the screen. It wasn't a scam. It was Clara. And she was waiting for him with 2 coffees and an unreadable expression. "Miss Caldwell would like to offer you $10,000 for one evening," she said plainly. Jimmy choked on air. Doing what exactly? Attending a gala as her escort. Fake, of course. No physical contact required. His first thought was, this is how you get kidnapped. His second thought was, 10 grand could fix the heater, the bike, and upgrade Asphalt's food to the stuff with gold flakes in it. He nodded. Done. 2 hours later, he stood in front of a mirror wearing a tailored navy blue suit that clung to him like it had been waiting for his body his whole life. His hair had been trimmed, his face moisturized. He looked expensive. It was uncomfortable. Behind him, a voice said, "Not bad." He turned. Janet stood in the doorway, draped in silver. A floor-length gown shimmered with flecks of light, catching on every curve, every angle. Her hair was down, soft waves framing her cheekbones. She looked nothing like the CEO he'd met in the elevator. She looked like a star. And when their eyes met, the storm in his chest finally broke. He managed to speak. "You look amazing." Her eyes flickered, and for the first time, he saw it, a blush. Tiny. Almost imperceptible. He said, "I look amazing." Should I say thank you? Or pretend it didn't happen? Ugh. I can't. What if I say, "You look handsome too"? Is that too forward? No. Ice queens do not initiate. He almost laughed out loud. Not at her. At the chaos behind the calm. She turned too quickly. "We should go." As the driver opened the car door and they stepped inside, Jimmy glanced at her hand resting near his. He didn't touch her. But he didn't need to. Because the air between them was already humming. The grand ballroom at the Peninsula gleamed like a palace. Crystal chandeliers dangled above velvet-draped tables. Waiters in white gloves glided silently between guests who looked like they'd never seen the inside of a microwave. Jimmy walked beside Janet, his posture straight, his breathing steady. The suit still felt like a lie draped across his shoulders, but her presence grounded him. Janet, for her part, moved with the elegance of a queen, but beneath the calm surface, her mind was a theater of fire. Stay focused. Smile just enough. Don't trip in the heels. Fletcher will be watching. Peterson too. Ethan looks terrifyingly good in that suit. Stop looking at his hands. Stop thinking about his hands. Just breathe. Heads turned as they entered. Whispers rippled like current through the crowd. Is that Janet Caldwell, with a date? Never seen him before. Old money? European? Maybe she's finally settling down. Jimmy didn't flinch. He'd learned something on his bike, how to move like you belonged on roads that didn't want you. He applied the same rule here. Head up. Chin steady. Don't blink first. They weren't 10 steps in when he appeared. Michael. Slick white tuxedo. Champagne in hand. Smile like a crocodile. And trailing just behind him, Peterson, sweating through his collar already. Janet, Michael said with mock warmth. You look positively invincible. Janet returned a razor-thin smile. Michael. You haven't changed a bit. His eyes slid to Jimmy. And this is? Before Jimmy could speak, Janet stepped in. This is my friend, Ethan Hayes. Friend? Janet, seriously? Say date. Say something better. Friend sounds like I picked him up at a soup kitchen. Great. Now I sound condescending in my own head. Don't flinch. He probably doesn't even care. Michael tilted his head. Nice to meet you, Mr. Hayes. And what is it you do? Jimmy opened his mouth. Nothing came out. What did he say? Courier? Delivery boy? Mind-reading catastrophe? Janet's voice cut through. He's an art investment. Based in Europe. Michael's eyebrows lifted. Really? How fascinating. Jimmy nodded slowly. Yes. Fascinating business. Michael took a sip of his drink. As it happens, I recently acquired a piece myself. A genuine Jasper Finch. Sunset on the Palisades. Perhaps you'd be willing to take a look later and give your expert opinion? Janet's spine stiffened. Oh no. Oh no. I didn't plan for this. Who the hell is Jasper Finch? Ethan's going to say something stupid. Michael's going to drag him. This whole night's going to implode. Abort mission. Abort. But Jimmy smiled. Calm. Steady. That's quite the acquisition. Michael raised a brow. You know the piece? Jimmy took a breath. He remembered something. A random delivery a few weeks back, University of Chicago. A professor talking his ear off about forgotten artists. Jasper Finch. A detail sparked. The hummingbird. Jimmy stepped forward slightly, voice casual. Of course. Sunset on the Palisades was considered Finch's lost masterpiece. Supposedly destroyed in a fire. Most copies are exceptional forgeries. Still, impressive replicas. Michael's smirk faltered. Mine is the original. Is that so? Jimmy said, tilting his head. Then it must include the hummingbird. Silence. Janet's eyes widened slightly. Michael blinked. Hummingbird? Jimmy nodded. Finch was obsessed with symbolism. In every authentic piece, especially his later works, he painted a tiny crimson hummingbird. Used a rare pigment, dragon's blood. It's hidden in the lower right corner. Almost microscopic. But it's there. Michael laughed. Too loud. Of course. I'll check for it. But Jimmy already knew. There was no hummingbird. The crowd had quieted. Conversation slowed. Janet stood beside him, composed on the outside, but inside. He made that up. He had to. That was a bluff. But it sounded so real. Michael looks like he swallowed a lemon. I want to scream. I want to kiss him. I want to scream while kissing him. Who is this man? Michael adjusted his cufflink. Well, I suppose I'll have my expert verify it. Nice talking with you both. He turned on his heel and vanished, Peterson scrambling after him. Janet exhaled slowly. You didn't have to do that. I know, Jimmy said. But it was fun. He offered his hand. She didn't hesitate. Their fingers met. And this time, she didn't pull away. The contact hit him like warmth spreading from his palm up his arm into his chest. Her thoughts flooded in, not chaotic this time, but intense, focused, real. He held my hand back. He stood in front of me like a wall. He made Michael choke on his ego. I don't care if the hummingbird was real. That was the most attractive thing I've ever seen. My heart is malfunctioning. I can't breathe. I need to look away. I don't want to. Just stay. He gently laced his fingers into hers. Her body stiffened for a breath. Then relaxed. Jimmy leaned in just enough to whisper. Still think the jacket makes me look like a traffic cone? Her lips twitched. The faintest smile. He remembered that? He remembered my thoughts? I'm going to die. This is it. Death by charm. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of glitter, champagne, and whispered rumors. Janet remained untouchable, elegant, poised. But every now and then, her hand would drift to his again. And every time it did, Jimmy held on tighter. He didn't need to hear her thoughts to know how she felt. But he listened anyway. Because hers were the only thoughts that didn't drown him. They made him feel human. Seen. Connected. And for the first time since lightning tried to kill him, Jimmy wasn't scared of the noise. Because maybe, just maybe, she wasn't noisy at all. She was music. The boardroom was silent. Not the heavy, formal kind of silence that came before quarterly reports or stockholder updates, this was the suffocating kind. The kind that came before war. Janet Caldwell stood at the head of the long, glass table, a single sheet of paper in her hands. The title across the top, Project Stardust, Letter of Intent. The directors sat in their cushioned chairs, posture stiff, waiting. At her right was Peterson, sweat glistening at his temples. At her left, Michael. Calm. Composed. Arrogant. His arms were folded, and a slow, satisfied smile curved his mouth like a knife. Jimmy sat in the back, quietly, in a tailored suit that still felt like a borrowed identity. Clara had snuck him in under the pretense of observing company operations for a potential investment. No one noticed him. No one ever did. But he was watching everything. Janet began to speak, her tone cold and surgical. We are here today to finalize Project Stardust, an initiative with significant implications for our international strategy. Breathe. Don't show them you're nervous. Don't blink too fast. You've prepared for this. You're not a little girl in your father's office anymore. You're the CEO now. She handed out copies of the letter, walking slowly. Deliberately. Her heels clicked like countdowns across the floor. Before I move forward, I want to thank Vice President Michael Rhodes for spearheading the proposal and organizing the outside negotiations. Michael gave a slight nod, fingers steepled. Only doing my duty. You smug parasite. You think you've already won. That's the problem. You always underestimate me at the final hour. Janet returned to the head of the table. She placed her fingers on the document like a pianist about to hit her first note. However, she said, lifting her gaze to meet every pair of eyes in the room, I've decided not to sign this agreement. The room didn't erupt. It imploded. A chorus of confused voices. Chairs shifting. Eyebrows raised. Michael didn't move. His smile just narrowed. That's very sudden, Janet, he said. This project has board support. We've reviewed it extensively. Yes, she replied. But I've been reviewing something else. She reached into her folder and pulled out another sheet. Legal documentation. An anonymous tip led to the discovery of several offshore accounts, traced back to financial irregularities connected to my father's retirement holdings. At first glance, the transactions appeared personal. However, further investigation revealed something different. She paused. Looked Michael dead in the eye. They were planted. Michael blinked, just once. I've since contacted the Department of Financial Crimes. We now have evidence that these documents were fabricated and uploaded using login credentials stolen from my late father's private server access, credentials accessed from your device, Michael. The room froze. Jimmy leaned forward slightly in his seat, barely breathing. Say it. Just say it. You have them. You're holding the blade now. They don't even realize they're bleeding. Janet stepped around the table. Calm. Glacial. The final nail was the communication thread between yourself and Fletcher Industries, threatening to release these fabricated documents unless I signed over controlling interest of Project Stardust. Gasps echoed. Even Peterson leaned back in shock. Janet placed a USB drive on the table. Clara, she said. Clara clicked the screen behind them to life. On display, emails. Dates. Transfers. A full trail. Michael stood. This is slander. You can't just. Janet cut him off. I've already handed this to our legal department. They've filed charges. The board will be voting shortly on your removal, pending immediate suspension of all duties. Security is waiting outside. Michael turned red, then pale, then back again. You're bluffing. I'm not, Janet said flatly. But feel free to check the timestamp on your hotel Wi-Fi logs in Geneva. I'm sure the feds already have. Michael looked around the room for support. None came. He made one last desperate lunge. You can't do this. You're just your father's little puppet, pretending to be a queen. You wouldn't be here without him. Janet turned slowly. Jimmy sat frozen as her voice cut through the boardroom like glass. No, she said. I wouldn't be here without me. She lifted the Project Stardust document with both hands, held it in front of her, and tore it clean down the middle. It made a sound, soft, but final. Then she turned and walked back to her seat, heels echoing like thunder. Don't cry. Don't exhale. Don't let them see that you were 1 inch from breaking. That your heart hasn't stopped pounding since you stepped into this room. Don't look at Ethan. If you look at him, you'll fall apart. But she did look. Just once. And Jimmy smiled, only slightly, like a secret between them. That's my girl. Security entered the room. Michael tried to protest. His voice cracked. His hands flailed. But no one listened. He was escorted out. The doors shut behind him. Janet sat back down. The directors murmured words of stunned approval. A few clapped. Peterson slithered away to the edge of the room like a shrinking shadow. Clara took the documents from the table. Janet closed her eyes for a breath. It's over. He's gone. You did it. You won. But her mind kept racing. Why do I still feel like I'm falling? Jimmy stood quietly and began walking toward the exit, knowing he'd done what he came to do. The kid from the bike. The boy from the alley. He didn't belong in marble halls. He didn't need a thank you. But then. Ethan. He stopped. Janet stood at the head of the table, hands trembling slightly at her sides. I'd like to speak with you privately. The boardroom slowly emptied. Janet didn't speak right away. She walked toward him. Paused. Then extended her hand. He didn't hesitate. He took it. And this time, when the current passed between their skin, it was warm. Gentle. Steady. Her thoughts came soft and clear. You weren't just the spark. You were the match, the flame, the fire. I'm tired of being alone. Please don't go back to just being a delivery boy. Please stay a little longer. He said nothing. He just tightened his fingers around hers. The car was silent. Rain tapped against the windshield like a slow drumbeat, soft and steady. The city lights blurred past, neon reds, flashing greens, golden halos from corner diners and flickering signs. Jimmy sat beside Janet in the back seat, his gloves off now, fingers curled loosely in his lap. Her hand rested just inches from his, motionless. Alicia drove without saying a word. Clara sat in the front passenger seat, answering emails with the speed of someone who could file lawsuits in her sleep. But in the back, there was only silence. Janet stared out the window, the street lamps tracing soft shadows over her cheekbones. Her silver gown shimmered faintly, but she looked smaller now, lighter, like something had been peeled away from her that had been weighing her down for years. Jimmy stole a glance at her, then quickly looked away. She didn't speak. But her thoughts whispered. I should say something. I want to say something. But if I open my mouth, I might say too much. I might ask him to stay. I might sound foolish. I might sound lonely. He could feel her struggling, balancing on that invisible tightrope between power and vulnerability. So he kept his voice gentle. You didn't have to drive me all the way. Janet's gaze flickered toward him, then back to the window. I wanted to. I couldn't send him home in a cab. Not after tonight. Not after everything. This isn't about courtesy. This is about the fact that I don't want the night to end. He exhaled slowly, the words turning over in his mind like a stone skipping across water. She cleared her throat. You were incredible today. I got lucky. No, she said quietly. You saw what others didn't. You said what others were too scared to. Silence again. They were nearing his block now. He recognized the broken streetlight at the corner, the graffiti mural with the owl half faded into brick. Janet's voice came again, quieter this time. Ethan. He glanced at her. She hesitated. Why did you help me? Jimmy thought about it. The truth was too simple. Because I heard you. Instead, he gave her a half shrug. Seemed like you needed a hand. A tiny smile ghosted her lips. You're a terrible liar. He chuckled. So are you. The car pulled to the curb outside his apartment, a narrow, three-story building that leaned slightly to the left, paint peeling like sunburnt skin. Alicia stepped out to open the door, but Janet stopped her with a gentle touch. I've got it. She stepped out of the car with Jimmy, her heels clicking on the wet pavement. Jimmy turned to face her under the yellow halo of the street lamp. Janet looked out of place here in her gown, surrounded by cracked sidewalks and rusty mailboxes. But she didn't seem to care. He took a breath. Why me? He asked softly. Why'd you choose me that night? Janet's gaze dropped. She didn't answer. So he stepped closer. Slowly. Carefully. And reached up. One hand brushed a strand of hair behind her ear. His fingertips grazed her skin. The contact was soft. And the thoughts poured in. I watched the footage after he left. The moment he bumped into Peterson. The look in his eyes, it wasn't fear. It was fury. Righteous. Protective. He didn't hear the blackmail. He didn't need to. He just knew. He looked like someone who'd been thrown into the dark his whole life, and still carried a match. I rewatched the elevator scene too. He stood in the corner like he wanted to disappear. But his eyes never flinched. That's when I knew. Fletcher couldn't use him. The media couldn't spin him. And yet, he made me feel more seen than anyone in my entire life. The safe part was because I checked his delivery record. No complaints. No missed jobs. Not once. A courier who treated every order like it mattered. That kind of person. I knew I could trust with my back. Jimmy's hand dropped. His eyes didn't leave hers. I'm not a model, he said softly. Not an art dealer. Not anything close to your world. I know. And that doesn't bother you? Janet looked up at him. The rain had slowed to a mist now. No, she said. That's why it matters. From her clutch, she pulled something out. The plastic was a little worn now. A small scuff on the corner. She held it up. The $2 keychain. The tiny cartoon cop grinned at him like a secret guardian. I kept it, she said. Then, slowly, she placed it in his palm. Thank you, she whispered. Jimmy looked down at it, then back at her. He smiled. Maybe, he murmured, being struck by lightning wasn't the worst thing after all. And just before he turned to go, he heard it, faint, fragile, but clear. I think. I want to hear his thoughts forever. Ending.